will continue to grow as the night goes on. So thank you for the invite, and I look forward to this other meeting that we'll have. Let me call it that.
Or alternate meeting.
Yes.
VP Stewart has lots of surprises, and he's a good Boy Scout. Be prepared. So himself and the committee will be presenting a very good program this evening. So look forward to that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your...
President, you already say you sound like you need some good Jamaican sunshine and lime juice.
Oh, yes. Yes. We're sawing from the glacier here, so.
Wishing you a speedy recovery back to your normal self.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Definitely. Anybody else? Let's move to Division 25. Do we have any Kiwanians from Division 25? I think I see.
Good evening, President. I think I got the title incorrect. It's not. I just joined. May I have your title?
Sure. President-elect Stephen.
President-elect Stephen. I am Chairman Natalie Ellis. And well, Chairman Natalie, we don't normally use surnames, do we? And at the moment, it's just myself, and I'm seeing Chairman Crystal as well. She just hopped on, and I'm positive that you will have more of our members online as we go along. I really expect a wonderful meeting. I see your presenter should be quite interesting and quite engaging. So I am quite excited, and I'm sure that all the other members of the team, when they do join, will also have the same expectation as I do. Thank you so much for having us, and God bless.
Welcome also, yes, all the members of the Kiwanis Club of Montego Bay. Just to add, President Natalie, that I don't know if you heard President Newton at the beginning, that unfortunately there's a conflict with our guest speaker. So we're going to have to reschedule the guest speaker for this evening's meeting, but we are going to have a different program, which you'll hear about shortly.
Okay. Thank you so much for that update. I joined a little bit late, so I didn't hear that. Thank you so much.
No problem. All right. I was at Division 25, Division 24. Do we have any Kiwanians from Division 24 joining us? Division 23 West. Division 23 East.
This is Renee Robinson from Kiwanis Club of Connect, and it's two of us online here tonight. Thanks for having us.
Okay. That's Chairman Renee, right? Yes.
No, Secretary, not
Secretary Renee. Okay, welcome to you. And Cyber Connect also. Anybody else from 23, where is that? 23 West? 23 East?
Good evening, President-elect Stephen.
Hello, President Roseanne.
Hi, I am President Roseanne from the Kiwanis Club of Old Harbour. Presently, we have myself and Kiwani and Doreen Webley on the platform, so we look forward to an engaging meeting and for the rescheduling of the other meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Roseanne, and welcome again. Any other clubs? I mean, 23 East, anybody from Division 23?
23 Central.
Yes.
President-elect Stephen.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten used to all of the new.
That's all right. I'm new
division, so please see with me.
Sure.
Yes, it's an absolute pleasure to be interclubbing with the Kiwanis Club of Kingston. And this evening we have 5 members joining from the Kiwanis Club of West St. Andrew. And I'm P.E. Rose.
P.E. Rose.
Yes.
Than any other club, than any other club. I'd rather belong to Kiwanis. I'd rather belong to Kiwanis. I'd rather belong to Kiwanis.
Somebody's microphone is open. Can't quite say who it is, but I'm asking if they can mute their microphone.
I think President, you already say your side meeting is bleeding in here. We're here in your business. Okay, there you go, P.
Yes.
Stephen.
Yes, thank you. So yes, P. Rose, thank you. I did get your delegation. Welcome also to Kiwanis Club of Kingston. You're always have a home here, and look forward to your participation in the meeting this evening. As I've always said before, we try to make the meeting as interactive as possible. So please utilize the chat feature on the Zoom to give your comments or to put in if any of your other members attend later on. That way we can see and hear from you, even though the presentation and other things are going on at the same time. So again, that's not just for your delegation, but everybody try and utilize the chat feature. We look forward to your interactions on that forum also. Okay, I'm still in the part of the program where we're introducing Kiwanian clubs. We had reached Division 23. I'm opening it up if there's any other interclub delegation or any club that is visiting.
Good evening, PE Stephen.
Good evening.
This is PE Garfield from EKPR. Thank you for sending us your invite to your meeting, and I'm a little disappointed that your guest speaker had a clash of, engagements, but yes, look forward to seeing the reschedule coming out. Currently, there's President Paul and PP Glenville along with myself. Should have at least 2 others during the meeting. Okay. Thank you again.
All right. And just for those people who are new, EKPR stands for Kiwanis Club of Eastern, Kingston, and Port Royal.
Yes, sir. We're right. The Pirates from the East.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you. We're still in Division 23. Are there any guests from who are non-Kiwanians who are joining us this evening? Guests of Kiwanians or just people who happen to hear about the meeting and are attending? No? Okay. Well, welcome. Or as the president noted, we started off small, but we're snowballing, and the amount of people, I guess, because of the traffic challenges and so forth, are rolling in, so to speak. And thank you again for everybody's attendance, and we look forward to an interesting and informative meeting as usual. Back to you, President Newton.
Thank you, P. Stephen. Well done as usual. I'd also like to throw out a special welcome to our prospect Emil Clark. I know I saw him on early on, and I know he's still there because he usually is with us. At this point, we are going into apologies for absence. I have looked, I have not seen any, I have not gotten any such notice. Have you received any, Secretary Willie?
No, I didn't receive any, President Newton.
Okay. All right. Well, then what we will do is that P. Stephen is back again on the floor with recognition of birthdays and anniversaries.
Okay. Thank you, President Newton. Back again. Very quickly, this part of the program, we tend to recognize those special occasions for our fellow Kiwanians and their wives or their spouses, and just a form of paying tribute to everybody on their special day. So for this week, that is the week of June 23rd to June 30th, we have a few Kiwanians who are celebrating the birthdays and a few Kiwanians who are having anniversaries. First of all, I see DP Easton McKinley on the call. So happy birthday to you. His birthday is not today, actually. It's on the 27th of this month. Is that right, DP Easton? Happy birthday when it rolls around.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. Every day on this earth is a blessing, so we wish you many, many more blessings in the years to come. Also, we have Audrey, who's the wife of DP Derek Clark. She celebrates her birthday on the 28th of January. So birthday greetings to her also. And in terms of anniversaries, we have 2 anniversaries this week. First of all, DP Lass Dixon and his wife Sandra, they celebrate their anniversary on the 26th of January. And then Kiwanian Dennis Townsend and his wife Nazaline celebrate their anniversary on the 30th of January. So happy anniversary to them on their wedding anniversary to both of those Kiwanians as they celebrate their special day. Is there anybody here, non-Kiwanis Club of Kingston, who have a birthday this week or anniversary that they're celebrating that they'd like to share with us? No January persons here? Okay, going once, going twice. If not, thank everybody for your patience. I'm looking forward to a good meeting and everybody have a positive and productive week as we go into the rest of the week. Thank you, President Newton. Microphone.
Thank you. Thank you as usual, P. Stephen. And I just want to recognize the presence amongst us of DLG Gertlin. How are you doing, DLG?
Hi, President. I'm doing all right. It's great to join you and great to see you. My sincere condolences to you. I know you haven't had a good time recently, but we pray that you're stronger and coping.
Thank you. Really appreciate it, DLG Gertlin.
And thank you for recognizing me. It's great to join the meeting.
Okay.
Have a great one.
We certainly will, because even though our main speaker isn't with us, you know DP Stewart.
Yes. And we can have fun.
Yeah, he always has something in the to pull out the hat. So
I'm sure he has. Yes.
All right. Great.
Great. Have a wonderful one.
Okay, thank you. And at this time, we're going to ask DLG Willie to do Kiwanis education for us.
Thank you, President Newton. Fellow Kiwanians and guests, in keeping with Kiwanis International 109th celebration of their 109th anniversary on Sunday gone, which was January 21st, I thought I would share with you this evening or speak to you briefly on the origin and history of Kiwanis. Many of us know it already, but there are 1 or 2 New York Kiwanians on the call who may find it interesting. Kiwanis International was founded in 1915 by a group of businessmen in Detroit, Michigan, in the United States. The organization was originally called the Large Benevolent Friends Order of Brothers, but changed its name to Kiwanis a year later. The name Kiwanis was coined from American Indian expression, no Kiwani, which means we trade. 1920, the motto of Kiwanis became we build. It remained the motto until 2005, when members voted to change it to serving the children of the world. In the early years, members focused on business networking. But in 1919, the organization changed its focus to service, specifically service to children. Kiwanis became an international organization with the founding of the Kiwanis Club of Hamilton, Ontario, Canada in 1916. Kiwanis clubs formed in communities across the United States and Canada until the 1960s, when worldwide extension was approved. Today, Kiwanis clubs are helping children thrive, prosper, and grow in about 90 nations and geographic locations. Currently, the 90 Kiwanis nations are divided into 5 regions: the United States of America, Eastern Canada, Caribbean District, originally the Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritime District, and Western Canada District, Europe, Asia Pacific, and the Americas, which include all areas south of the United States. All people are welcome to participate in the Kiwanis movement of improving communities for children. In 1987, women were invited to join. In 2008, the delegates approved a resolution that calls for Kiwanis clubs to celebrate and foster inclusiveness. The entry of Kiwanis into Jamaica in 1964 with the organization of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston was part of its international expansion, which had formally begun in 1962. Nevertheless, the organization came to Jamaica with its vision, its policies, its organizational structure, and its modus operandi already well established. It was entering a country with a long tradition of voluntary organization and a country in which there were considerable scope for the work of Kiwanis. Welfare organizations in Jamaica had for a long time focused on child welfare, health, education, poverty alleviation, and rehabilitation. Fellow Kiwanis and members, I trust you found that interesting. Thank you very much, President.
Thank you, DLG Willie. And yes, I hope everyone was listening. And just listening to DLG Willie, you know, I felt led to say this, that not just to the members of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston, but I'm talking in general now, to all Kiwanians on the platform right now. We know that especially if you are still fully employed, that the time you spend doing Kiwanis business, sometimes it clashes with what you have to do in your regular life, in your day-to-day. But we ask you to remember the reason you joined Kiwanis in the first place. So we cannot leave Kiwanis business to just be when it's convenient. Just like how we find the time to do everything else, we have to find the time to support our clubs, support the projects, and don't just be persons who we have a pin to show that we are Kiwanians and that's it. It's more than that. Because we took a sort of oath to serve the children of the world. And if we are not supporting our clubs in the way we should, with our time and with our finances, then really we're not being true to that oath we took. So I'm just asking all Kiwanians here, remember why you joined Kiwanis in the first place. Don't just be satisfied to sit back and watch others do the heavy lifting. As I said, more hands make work light. Now with that sermon over, I am going to...
President Newton?
Yes, DLG Willie.
I noticed that our other prospect, Jermaine Wood, has joined. You may want to extend a warm welcome to him. That's Jermaine Wood.
Okay, Jermaine Wood. A warm welcome to you. A warm welcome to you, and hopefully, well, not hopefully, we know pretty soon, you will no longer be a prospect, but you will be Kiwanian Jermaine.
Greetings,
welcome,
everybody.
sir. Good evening, sir. Good to see you. Good to have you.
Happy to be here, sir.
All right, great. All right. No, we are at the point of our guest speaker, but as I said earlier on, our guest speaker had a clash of diary, and so DP Stewart has something else planned for us tonight. So let me turn you over now to the mystery man DP Stewart, who will bring you in on what it is we have for tonight. DP Stewart.
Yes, President Newton.
Your time, sir.
Okay, everybody hear me?
I don't think you look like that picture I'm seeing, DP Stewart.
No, I'm not as good looking.
Yeah, I was just going to say she's a little better looking than you.
Yes, I easily accept that. Fellow Kiwanans and guests, it's not the first time that we have had a late cancellation, and we have always been able to do something. This time, I will admit, there was a hint of the possibility, and then it looked like it was gonna work out fine. And then late this evening, it became no. It became a no. So we will reschedule Dr. Rose very shortly, probably the first week in February, but I won't confirm that yet. Now, because of that little hiccup, there was a suggestion made that, because we've been building up quite a library of past meetings, on our case, on our YouTube channel. And there was a comment made by our previous speaker last week, the one who spoke on the Jamaican language, which led me to think about one particular presentation. And it was a presentation done by about a little over a year ago, in fact, in May 2022, by Dr. Herbert Gayle. Now, we have all been thinking about the crime situation. And one thing that has bothered me is that our governments, and when I say this, I mean successive governments, don't seem to fully utilize the expertise that is among us. And sometimes I wonder why. But Dr. Gayle, he had given us this presentation on the whole, how to attack the crime situation. And I've watched it again. And I must admit, although I was present the first time, a lot of it just didn't stay in my head. And even if some of you had heard it before, I'm sure there must be some who were there at the time. There's a lot that we probably didn't really penetrate. And I really thought this was something that we could all benefit from, because I even see some potential Kiwanis projects coming out of this, because he really pointed out the whole point about the youth and young men, and also the relationship with women. So I want to play this video. I want to play this video again. We're gonna just take it straight from the introduction and through the Q&A. And please, I think when you watch it, think of what Kiwanis, the impact could be. Because I do remember, when I first approached him, he did say to me, but when I do this presentation, what next? What are you gonna do? And I don't think we have done much. I don't want to say we haven't done anything, but I don't think we have done much to basically use the tools that he was giving us as an idea. Okay, so let me just stop this speaking and let me share my screen, and I'll start the presentation. He was introduced by, well, I won't have to say anything. Just listen now.
Desmond. Welcome. We now move to our feature event for the evening, the introduction of our guest speaker, and that will be done by Kiwanian Sadiki Blake. Over to you, Sadiki.
Good night or good evening to fellow Kiwanians and guests. And I'll be making the introduction for Dr. Gayle. Herbert Samuel Gayle, PhD from London, MSc, BA, UWI, is a senior lecturer at the University of the West Indies, Mona, Jamaica. Trained as a social anthropologist who specializes in social violence, gangs, murder-suicide, repeat killers, and domestic violence. He has over 2.5 decades of experience living with and studying youth gangs and the transnational criminal organizations in 17 countries in the Caribbean, Central America, USA, and Europe and Asia. He has impacted policies in 3 Caribbean states to reduce social violence, work with 6 international law firms to reduce deportation to Jamaica, and has helped to guide international development partners and foreign governments to focus aid on the poorest and most vulnerable people, with special emphasis on abused mothers and boys. He has been interviewed by over 30 international media houses, including BBC and Associated Press. Dr. Gayle is also a methods expert, trained at the advanced level in all 4 approaches: qualitative, quantitative, mixed, and participatory and action research part. As a violence expert and youth advocate, Dr. Gayle has done public lectures, motivational presentations, workshops, and seminars in over 50 countries. As an advocate of Black gender partnership, he has been keynote speaker at 16 International Women's Day events, where he has stressed the need for women to enter politics to provide a cognitive balance to the lopsided frame of male political leadership. He has also been the strategist for 6 women who have successfully entered governments in 3 countries. He has done over 70 major studies and has published several books, chapters, and articles, including the recent work of Males and Tertiary Education in Jamaica, launched October 2020. He is the chairman of Fathers Incorporated and Children First Agency, and sits on various commissions, task forces, and advisory councils aimed at national and regional development. Viewers, please help me welcome Dr. Gayle. Over to you, VP Richard.
I'll ask everyone to mute their microphones at this time, and so we can hear.
All right. Thanks very much for welcoming me. Let me just say good evening to everyone. And I hope we can have a good rap session in which we learn something about what's been happening in Jamaica and how we can solve the problem. I'm going to ask to be allowed to share screen as I share a PowerPoint with you.
Yes,
Thank you very
you
much.
you have been made co-host. Yeah, right.
Thank you. All right. So we're looking at how we solve Jamaica's violence problem. And I want to just give you a quick synopsis of Jamaica's violence. So if you understand anything about Jamaica, you will know that it is located in the LAC, Latin America and the Caribbean. And that region accounts for less than 10% of the world's population, but approximately 40% of its murders are homicide. In this region, we're talking about the core reason being the legacy of colonization. And this is an interesting area because quite often people seem not to understand that this area that is so extremely violent, that is the most violent zone in the world, was actually called the New World, or the colonized space in the Western Hemisphere. And if you sit down and reflect a little bit on even your basic history, you'll recognize that the problem for this area is to make the transition from being owned, from being the property of people who live over 4,000 miles away, to self-ownership. And one of the core crises that we now experience is that with the exception in the entire LAC of Nicaragua, and to some extent parts of different areas, such as parts of the United States, you will see that there has been no successful transition of the people of the region from being owned to self-ownership. And that is your primary crisis. Now, in the past decades, what you will find out from any study at all committed is that in the entire LAC, again, in the past 10 years, more than 50% of national security budgets are spent on weapons and force. How to get humans to comply rather than how to develop the resource called humans. So that's been the crisis. If you look at the most violent countries in the world since the year 2000, and these are the averages, you will see Jamaica is the 4th most violent place on earth. Okay? And you will notice also that there are three Caribbean states in the top 10 most violent countries. You will see Honduras, El Salvador, Venezuela. Almost all of those, with the exception of South Africa, are LAC. And South Africa, by the way, their homicide rate is now dropping below 30 per 100,000, which is the hallmark I'm going to teach you a little bit about. If you get to Jamaica, it is easy to identify where our violence is located. It's located in Kingston, which has the highest homicide rate in the region, in Jamaica, and almost in the entire Western Hemisphere, with a homicide rate on average since the year 2000 of 156 humans dying per 100,000. And by the way, when we say Kingston here, we're not speaking about the greater Kingston, we're speaking about Kingston. And then there's St. Andrew, which drops to 35, St. Catherine 48, Clarendon 44. And that makes up the larger hub of violence. And of course, you will know, if those of you who've been following, that 4 years ago, members of the groups within the Clarendon St. Catherine zone attempted to annex Manchester. Didn't work out, but I guarantee you there'll be further attempts if no changes come. And then we have St. James, with a homicide rate since the year 2000 of 101 per 100,000, with Westmoreland being its anchor, our little sister, and Hanover and Trelawney and St. Elizabeth, as we speak, is being annexed. So that is basically what your gang violence belt looks like, with a very thin area to the central, to the northeast of the country that does not have organized crime yet. And when we say that, we don't mean that they're not pockets of organized crime. It's just that that area, that tourist area, from Portland all the way through, and that parish called St. Thomas, does not have major gangs operating with centers. What they have are spill-offs from other areas. Now, we also have to understand the GBV of our violence, and that's a word, that's a term that Jamaicans, I am certain if I set an exam on GBV, 1% of Jamaicans would pass it, because GBV in Jamaica and in the Western Hemisphere has been used as a term of propaganda rather than science. Gender-based violence means all violence committed against any group based on their sex or their interpretation of their sex and based on their identity. And here are your GBV data, which has nothing to do with the propaganda you hear every day. Men aged 18 to 69 make up 80% of all persons killed in Jamaica. Boys make up the second largest group with 9.1%, followed by women aged 18 to 69%, which makes up 7.8%, followed by males 70 years and older, followed by girls, and the smallest group, women 70 years and older. These are your hardcore facts, not what you hear when people are campaigning. That distinction must be made as scientists. Now, if you look at the various benchmarks that we've created as violence experts, the first one is the green one that you see at the bottom, the Savannah green. For those of us who have done art, right? The Savannah green line at the bottom is 30 per 100,000, which was created by a team headed by myself at SOAS in 2005, sorry, as we attempted to find out how it is that we can distinguish a country that is on the cusp of a civil war as against other countries. And so we found out that if your homicide rate is higher than 30 per 100,000, and I'll go back and show you Jamaica very quickly, average 48, okay? Don't need to say more than that. If your homicide rate exceeds 30 per 100,000, it means you have characteristics of a civil war. Okay, in 1980, and I'll get to that very quickly, our homicide rate was 48 per 100,000. That was a civil war. The next benchmark is the US-led invasion of Iraq, where 205 per 100,000 humans were killed in terms of war-related deaths. And I want you to look very carefully that in St. James and Kingston, male combatants age 15 to 34 years old, and males overall, their homicide rate exceed the velocity of homicide that were war-related in Iraq, right? Which is 205 per 100,000. Why do we call the age 15 to 34 the age of combatants? Because after age 34, basically nobody wants to recruit you into a gang. You begin to look into family and take care of yourself and all of these things, all right? So nobody really wants to recruit you. It's the age, so the combatant age scientifically is 15, which is where you start, to 34, which is where you begin to produce less alpha cells. Now, let's look at the area that Jamaica has spent the most media time on, women dying in Jamaica. And I want to spend some time here because this is where you spend your time campaigning without understanding the implications of what you're doing. So if you look at this, and this was a study done, of course, sponsored by women in England, done in Jamaica, right, covering 4 years, 2011, 12, 13, and 14. And the first thing you'll see is that almost one third of all women who die in Jamaica die because men who are having war with themselves want to trigger a war. The second group are women who are accused of being informers. And women can be accused of being informers because they had a child with a member of a section of a community, and then the alignments of the community change, and her man, our baby father, now happens to be on the other side. By having that man, she can be tagged an informer because she has now lost the issue of trust, which is central to her survival. That's the second largest group. And then we have the 8% of women, who anywhere you see a gang, anywhere, listen to me again, anywhere you see an effective gang war that is not ending, that is persisting, has female gang strategists who do not go to war, but stay behind the scenes and help the men to plan the war. This is what is happening in Jamaica. And then we have gang family wipeouts. Or you can have scamming family wipeouts where the entire family is hit and women die. Now I want you to add for me 32 plus 13 plus 8 plus 11, and you are going to discover something. What should you discover? You should discover that almost 2/3 of all violence in Jamaica committed against women in terms of women dying, as in homicide against women, are committed because men are having war with men. And that is precisely why in Jamaica, in Trinidad, in Belize, in El Salvador, in Guatemala, in Honduras, in all the countries I have worked, once the murder rate for men go up, the murder rate for women go up, because women's death in the LAC is a corollary of men's death. There is nothing independent in this matter. If you solve violence against women, you cannot solve violence against women. What on earth do I mean by that epigram? It's not just for the skill of linguistic rhetoric. I needed to understand that if something is caused, if 2/3 of something is caused by something else, you cannot fix that 2/3 without fixing the whole. And that is what I've been trying to say to people. And sometimes it's been hilarious watching people interpret that or misinterpret that, right? Deliberately for the purpose of scandal and the purpose of drama and the purpose of selling newspapers. It's annoying. It is important, if we're going to solve violence against women, that we understand how women die. And then we have, of course, Métis War. 11% of all the women who die in Jamaica are killed by contract by other women, because there are so many women in Jamaica who are in relationships in which they are competing for an earning male. I remember us tracking this data repeatedly, going over. It can't be 11. You can't tell me that 1 of 10, more than 1 of 10 of the women who die in Jamaica is because 2 women are fighting over a man or over men in some cases, in a few of the cases we've found. And then we have 21%, right, of our homicide against women that are considered to be direct femicide. In other words, these women die in relationships with men, okay? And that's called intimate partner violence, IPV. And 4% of all women who are killed in Jamaica in those 4 years were killed by family and kin, family members, okay? Let's go. Don't have to go through the implications. I think you understand the implications well. Let's go to section B. How we created hell.
I just paused the video for a second because when I was watching it again, I realized that because he didn't spend any time on this recap, I found that when I read it, it made a difference. So I want to just read the section for you, please. I'm just trying to, let me just cue it up.
Family and kin, family members, okay? Matter of.
Okay, I just want to read this for you. Okay, it says implication, Jamaica has one of the highest actual murder of women in the world, top 5, simply because our overall murder is the 4th worst in the world. Every year in Jamaica, Belize, and Trinidad, the homicide rate of women move in the same direction of those of men. This is because 64% of our women who die are as a result of men's gang wars. This means that the most effective way to reduce the death of young women is to save young men. One massive error that serves only the purpose of campaigns and or media presentations is the focus on the 21% of women who die by the hands of men in IPV settings, otherwise referred to as domestic violence, while ignoring the 11% who die by direct violence and contract killings by other women. Most of these killings are due to the conflicts over earning partners. Empower young men as we empower our young women, and the murder of our women will reduce dramatically. Okay, I'll just continue.
Don't have to go through the implications. I think you understand the implications well. Let's go to section B. How we created hell, the hell we live in today. And I want to take you from slavery to 1970s, and I want to share with you what really happened after we had this matter of emancipation. So the first thing you need to understand is that in 1970, when UNESCO and other units looked at the situation of education in the world, we were in a state of panic. To every 100 males who were experiencing or enrolled in a tertiary institution, there were only 74 women. 74. That's crisis. And the world responded to that crisis. In fact, in Jamaica, Jamaican women were 10 below because we did not have the revolution of Bev Brown and Two is Better Than Too Many, or nor had we at this point had the combination of Beverly Manley and Michael Manley. I think anybody who's Jamaican understand what happened when those two people came together to create the Roots program, Rely on Yourselves to Success, which triggered changes for women in Jamaica. You may not find this documented. This is really what exists. And we hope some people will document how the program and the progress of women in Jamaica started from a political base as a campaign framework and then became reality through the Family Planning Board with the name and the campaign around Two is Better Than Too Many. What you'll find in Jamaica, in the rest of the world, is a boomerang from 74% in 1970 to 108 women in tertiary institutions compared to 100 men. And in Jamaica, a reverse crisis of a shift from 64 women to 100 men in university to 228 by 2011. And I'll take you through how that happened. In 1729, of course, the first phase I wanted to look at is called slavery, right? The male shut out of slavery, the female shut out of slavery, sorry. So in 1729, we had Woolmer's, and 74 years, this was 74 years after British arrival. If you look over the girls' school side, you'll see it's blank because no schools were made for women, for females in this period. We had Manning's, which was a boys' school, and 150 years later became co-ed. And then we had Jamaica College. Somebody's microphone is on. In the second phase, we had 2 schools built for white males and 2 schools built for white females. Please understand that these were white men. In this entire era, we are speaking about white men and an absence of white women who would have to be sent back to England to study. In phase 2, we are now beginning to see this is the end of slavery. 1807 is the end of the slave trade, all right? 1834 is the end of slavery itself. 1838 is the end of is what is called emancipation. And in this era, what you find, right, is George's College and Monroe being made, and Immaculate Conception and Hampton being made for white girls, white boys. Now let's get to Black people's time. Phase 3, the fracture of the empire. This is when, if you remember, London had a massive display of the power of the British Empire, and everything went downhill afterwards, leading straight up to the Frome riots in my parish where I was born in Westmoreland. And during this period, something dramatic happened, because as Britain paid attention to the loss of their kingdom and everything just fracturing, the planters became adamant that they would maintain a presence of people on the plantation. And if you look at the work, there's so many persons who've written about this, or you can go to the colonial office or anywhere and you can begin to dig up material on what happened, and you'll see what happened. Who did they build school for during this period? Cornwall College, Calabar, Black Baptist, Kingston College built also in this era for boys. Look at the girls' side. As the planters had their 14, in fact, I see a documentation that said they had 14 different meetings, adamant that you cannot educate boys, you cannot build school for Black boys when we need them on the plantation. And therefore, let's count them. Let's have fun. Woolmer's girls separated. Westwood, Convent of Mercy, St. Hugh's, St. Hilda's, and this one I am told always to pronounce carefully, St. Andrew, Mount Alvernia, Montego Bay High, Marymount, Holy Childhood. This was not coincidence. This was done because people needed to carry on a business that already was stripped away by abolitionists. Quite often people think, slavery is done. We're done with it. Not if the right strategies are put in place by the wrong people. And that is why today we have 15 all-girls schools and only 7 all-boys schools. That is why today we have literally 19,000 women having access to the highest level of education in all-girls schools compared to just 10,000 young men. That is why these schools are so crowded. That is why every single all-boys school you go to, it's packed, it's crammed. They're carrying over their capacity because there are only 7 of them. And then I'm going to teach you a little bit as we go on for you to understand what happens in co-ed schools and the new secondary schools built by, of course, successive labor right and comrade governments in Jamaica. because they didn't build schools that were as equipped as the schools we are discussing now. Let's go. Phase 4, the Carteret College upgraded to boys' grammar and then became co-ed. The Queen's School being built. Merle Grove, Miriam Speed, and everybody related to her. Big up yourself. Started as a boys' school, became co-ed, and then the boys were asked to leave. Merle Grove is today a girls' school. And Bishop Gibson High, which was promised by Bishop Gibson as the sister to Kingston College. When you have a setup like that, and you have successive governments who haven't changed anything there, and then you have 40 years of campaigning for women, you are going to have a nightmare. You are going to have a beautiful nightmare that can't be solved by the police. But we're going to get into the depth of it. Let's go to section C, 1974 to present. In 1974, when the homicide rate was merely 12 per 100,000, Jamaica made a massive error. That error is called the creation of the Suppression of Crimes Act. And this is how a bad situation of slavery and post-slavery became worse. And since then, we've had a pattern that nobody on earth can miss. Even if your IQ is just barely above 100, you're still going to pick this up. There's a spike in violence. The government of Jamaica creates a strike force. They have some interesting names: Acid, Kingfish, Tried. Man, such creative names. And they suppress the violence. And then the police officers and JDF who are involved burns out. They need counseling. They need help. They attack their families. They just burnt out when you see them because they're doing double shifts. They're out in the streets trying to suppress just in time for an election. And as soon as they burn out, the violence returns 5% higher on average than it was before the strike force was created. And then we have to create another strike force, more suppression, SOE, ZOSO. But force has limits. Anybody at all who can read, who can sit down and reflect for 5 minutes, understands that force has limits. It needs to be the right mix. It needs to be swift and short, not prolonged, or you lose the traction gained. You can't beat somebody every day. After a while, he becomes adjusted to it. You can't put up ZOSO lines every day. After a while, people will park cars beside your ZOSO line and put for sale on it, which means they actually see you creating an opportunity for business. It becomes ridiculous. When you are attempting to reduce violence, it needs to work at a 3-tier system: the primary, the secondary, and tertiary. It needs legitimacy. And please take the time out, folk. You won't become a nerd. Take the time out to read Charles Tilley's work on the power of legitimacy. Who is the most legitimate person who can harm you? Your mother. Your mother can smack you in halfway tree, smack you in crossroads while you're a young man with your friends, and you will laugh and say, Chaman, love me, man, but your father can't do it. Legitimacy is built on repeated delivery and the emotional connection that you understand that the delivery is being made. Even if a father delivers, he will not ever experience Mother's Day, anything parallel. Mother's Day is ranked what? Number 2 in the world in terms of a festivity, in terms of expenditures. And Father's Day is ranked 26th in the world. Go online and look. Legitimacy. Politicians, governments must make an attempt to create legitimacy if force is going to be applied. And finally, force works better with dictatorships, not for democracies. In democracies, there's always enough transparency and accountability to address dictatorships when they emerge in terms of just protracted use of force against civilians. This is your homicide belt since the year 1960, 2 years before independence. The data here tracks those homicides. The first spike you see here is, of course, 48 per 100,000, Jamaica's Civil War, 1978 to 2000 to 1980, sorry. And then you'll see in 2005, this is the year when Jamaica was the happiest people on earth and the most violent, with a homicide rate of 64. And then we are now in the suppression belt, the longest protracted suppression you've seen in the history of your country since independence. The government's attempt is to hold this for as long as possible. When the burnouts come, God help us. So the 3 levels of addressing violence is simple this. The primary is considered to be the foundational, and that means the structural and long-lasting issues relating to education, parenting skills, preventative, right? Mentorship, all of these things. Economic opportunities, ontological securities, changing violence norms, getting your boys back in school. All of these activities are your primaries. Your secondaries are the things that politicians do. They want it to be visible. Those are the curative, not preventative, but the curative. They are visible, they are immediate, and they're medium term. And the best ones you're going to have is like conflict resolution, counseling, social welfare, temporary jobs, restorative justice. But the most effective is redeployment of combatants. If you can take gangs and redeploy them, right? The ones who aren't scamming are going to be a challenge, but if you can redeploy them into education and retraining, you are going to be reducing violence. And the tertiary, then this is where governments park the bus since 1974. Labor rights and comrades love this. They love temporary relief, what we call in violence studies the morphinization of violence. You know, when people go to do surgery and they get the morphine, they're so high. Sometimes they forget they're about to do the surgery. That's what governments do to us. They give you morphine. They have peace treaties, ceasefires, states of emergencies, ZOSOs. They relocate the problem. They attack one area and the gangs run to another one. And what do civilians do? They join the joke. They have peace marches. They have all of these things that make you look busy. They have prayer breakfasts. You go, you get ackee and saltfish and very nice food. They have gun amnesties where young people take in the old guns, get money and buy new guns. We've made so many tertiary, stupid errors about solving violence. It has become ridiculous to those of us who are trained. Where do you need to go? Back to your primary. But we'll come back to that. Ontological security is the essence of what keeps young people stable. What do we mean by ontological security? Having a sense of hope, having a sense of stability. Yes? Knowing that tomorrow, and I'll give you your ontological security test. When I worked at a hospital in London, when I was studying in England, right, I was on a team of, you know, when you're studying abroad, you do everything to make a little money, right? Okay. And I remember carefully that in my training, I was told, we're giving you 10 persons per week to keep alive. Okay. Yes, that was my job. Keep these 10 people alive, Herbs. Don't lose them. Okay. You can't lose one of them. And in my training, we get a question like this to ask. Okay, we keep tabs very closely with these 10 people, even if I'm in class at SOAS, which is the School of Oriental and African Studies, and my phone goes off, I have to leave because I have these 10 human beings to keep alive. And what's the core question? Hey, Stephanie, what are you going to have for breakfast tomorrow morning? And she goes, oh my goodness, tomorrow morning, Herbs, I am not going to have a continental breakfast. I'm going to have me some Jamaican breakfast. It's going to be ackee and saltfish. Oh my, it's going to be beautiful. You know, Stephanie is not going to kill herself. If you ask Stephanie, Steph, what's for breakfast tomorrow morning? Do you want me to join you for breakfast? And she goes, Herbs, I don't care about no breakfast. then you immediately punch the security button that says, find Stephanie. Ontological security, having hope for tomorrow, is the essence of life. And if you can't understand that, then let me try and break this down. In 2001, my class decided we were going to cover as many countries as possible. We needed to know how we address social suicide. How do we find out these handful of things, yeah, that young people said they needed in order to be stable? Okay, and this is what we found. We found 4 things: food, sense of safety, parenting, and opportunity structures, or education and training. 4 things, and we're going to come back to that. And so gradually we started to create 5 levels of young people, right, in terms of their risk levels based on ontological security. And we created an ontological security index, which I will show you momentarily. And so we were able to create a unit called Shielded Youth, like myself, growing up in Savlamar and Seaton Crescent, where everybody would make sure they protect me. This boy going to become lawyer or doctor, you know. He might come back and help me, so don't touch him. All right? That's a shielded youth. And then we had those who were exposed to low levels of violence, all right? And then we had the medium ones that were exposed to high level, but only respond by stabbing or shooting and beating up people, but not killing. And then we have the high violence ones that have killed once. And then we have the shooters and repeated killers who've killed more than once. Let's go. This is what we found. When you match males and females, the picture, the difference is stark. When you look at shielded, 14% of boys in the inner city, in the most violent communities, are shielded compared to 1/3 of girls, 32 point something percent. Okay, when you look at low violence, you'll see almost 1/3 of boys are low violence, are low risk to violence, while for girls it's 44%. And when you go up, you will see that, if you notice, 24% of girls have medium, right? 23.5% have medium, and 0.5 are high. There are no shutter females in the frame. When you look at boys, you'll see 5% of inner city males between the age of 15 and 34 has already killed someone. They are high risk on shutters. 0.5% are shutters, mean 1 in every 20 males between the age of 15 and 34 has killed repeatedly. Now, what do you need to know? We've just covered all of this. 1 of 7 inner city males would be shielded compared to 1 of 3 females fiercely protected by a family. Let's look at those most basic needs. Food. If you go to this Jamaica survey of living conditions, one of the first things you will see that pops out at you is that it shows that 3.3% of males were considered underweight birth to 5 years old. And remember, UNICEF and the rest of the world use an indicator called the U5MR. You want to look at what's happening to your children birth to 5 years old. So 3.3% of females are girls or infant females are underweight or malnourished compared to 8.8% of males. In other words, Jamaican males are 2.7 times more likely to be underweight or mistreated during infancy than their female counterparts. UNICEF backed this data up in their 2004 data that shows that females are twice more likely to be better breastfed than males, or comprehensively breastfed than males. And when you sit down with inner city people and you say, why do you treat the boys like that? Herbs, we can't make them soft, because if them soft, don't get them all dead. Let me say that in English language. The mothers are not cruel. They did not set out to treat the boys with such high levels of abuse. Unconsciously or subconsciously, they understand the nightmare that these boys are going to go through, and they try, without even thinking sometimes, to toughen them up. This is the same pattern you'll find for 15 to 24-year-olds. Same pattern. The pattern does not change between birth to 5 years old and the rest of their lives of these unfortunate young men. The problem for inner city young men is that they must provide food for themselves as well as for their families, which include mother first, sister, and other siblings. For young females, their concerns are for themselves and their children. These data have been repeated in studies. No study has been done in this area that hasn't found the exact same thing. Patriarchy is for rich people. Patriarchy damages young men because it requires of them to become breadwinners when they have not had the training or the skills to provide food. And therefore, please note the terms. Man, I go hunt some food, which could mean killing you. In Belize, man, I go catch and kill, which is actually more dramatic. And therefore, patriarchy is very damaging to young, poor, inner city males because they do not have the resources. A young man said to me, Herbs, I went to church and I was shocked. The pastor said to me, you are supposed to be the head of the household. When we get money from to be no head of no household, Herbs? Even the very Christianity that we apply to the lives of young people who have no resources puts them under pressure to commit crime without our understanding that this is not the way to go. After coming back from university in London, I began to try and see if I can spread a rhetoric among people who were colonized, Black people if you prefer, a rhetoric of partnership with your women rather than trying to be the leader, which doesn't work. We noticed as families partner, only 3% of them will end up having intimate partner violence compared to 25% average for the country. But every time you ask people to partner, they get into the spirit, and it's not the Lord's day. Because we've been sown by the North, we've been sown these ideas of gender competition rather than gender partnership. Men and women left slavery together. Men did not leave slavery and left women behind. They left slavery together. It is so sick, and I'm so sick and tired of listening to people pretending that only one group of people have problems. And what's fascinating about the media that is really destructive is that the media actually selects who of the women must stay in the presence and the conscience of the people for more than 9 days. Do you want me to give you the profile of those women? Out of 118 women killed every year, between 5 and 7 will be light skinned. And those are the ones that stay in the consciousness of the people of Jamaica. The dark-skinned women are forgotten. Jamaicans have to become more conscious, more scientific, less propagandistic, less dependent on the messages from the North, and begin to assess themselves. This is food. The green one is St. James. I will use St. James to make a point. 27% of males in Montego Bay, when we did the study, were food insecure, compared to 15% for females. Females are always twice better. Males, 15% hungry full-time, teaching me how to go to a pipe, put your hand under the pipe, put enough water in your stomach so the stomach hydrochloric acid doesn't eat itself. Yes? And I'm going to tell you what that does to the psyche of these young men. I'm going to tell you what that does to the amygdala. Just behind your eyes are 2 subunits of the brain. The suborbital cortex and the amygdala. The amygdala is your center of emotions. Okay? They must remain in balance. When you are hungry for a protracted period, The orbital cortex, otherwise known as your conscience, if you want an easy word to remember, must be stifled, must be suppressed by the need for food. And that's what Bounty Killer means when he says, if I'm hungry again, they are going to see me 9. That is why that song, banned at the time, still remains one of the most powerful songs ever done in Jamaica, that sends the message clear to those who want to listen as to what we've been doing to ourselves. Suicide. Manchester has a suicide problem. Won't be able to get into that now. It's based on the standard of living and the expectations, and the high levels of patriarchy puts immense pressure on the women. A lot of them will tell you they are suicidal. Let's bring food, parenting. Yes, let's bring all of these together. What you're going to find out very quickly is that shielded males, only 10% of them suffer from chronic hunger, compared to 21% of low violence or low risk, 25% of medium, 43% of high risk, and 52%, more than half of all shatters, more than half of all the people who kill more than once were chronically hungry or suffered from chronic hunger. What is there in these data that we can't understand? Let's look at young people who are assisting their families. 70% of the Montegonian males who are young people, aged 16 to 24, were assisting before they themselves had anything to give, compared to 36% of females. The others go on to school. Some will end up having an MA, but no MAN. Look at the males who are carrying their families alone, 17% in Montego Bay. Manchester, of course, is the best of the 3 parishes. But look at that. For the females, it's always twice less of the nightmare. Twice more support, twice less of the nightmare. Input, output. What you sow is what you reap. Let's break down the young men carrying their families. What do you see? The exact same pattern. The exact same pattern. This is for St. James. Same pattern. Same 10% of the shielded, all the way up to the shutters. Sense and security. What do you discover? The number one way to identify a young man who is going to be in trouble, who is going to literally end up becoming a gang member, is if his family is already involved in crime. 25% of all gunmen who have children, who have boys, 25% of those boys will become gunmen. And believe me, if you are producing a turnover of 25%, you are going to have a lot of killings. 17. For a boy who is not a member of a crime family, the crime family boys are 17.3 times more likely to be high risk. Tortured children. Tortured children are 5.4 times more likely to be high risk. Hungry children, it's all there. 3.6 times more. Those who see their parents beating up each other, 3.1 times more. Those who drop out of school, 2.7 times more. Those who have to go out and hustle food for their mothers and sisters, 2.5 times more likely to become a shutter or a high risk. That means to kill someone. Yeah? And here is the drama that I want you to take your time and absorb. We've done so much propaganda. We spend so much time saying garbage that we seem not to get it in our cranium. In the most peaceful inner city communities, 17% of the children's fathers are dead or missing, compared to 10% of the mothers. In the most violent communities, 37%, more than a third of the fathers are dead or in prison, compared to 15% of mothers. Here are the national figures from, of course, the Survey of Living Conditions, since we are waiting on our new census. These are the figures. These figures are from the Survey of Living Conditions that fills the gap until the census comes. 42% of Jamaican children have a biological father living in their homes, and 82% of Jamaican children have a biological mother living in their homes. I want you to move from the national figures to the inner city, and the first thing you notice, father presence dropped by 50% and mother's presence dropped also by almost 50%. There is no drama in the data that says only father presence drops. In the inner city, children simply do not have parents. There's nothing more annoying as the head of Fathers Inc., as the chairman of Fathers Inc., to hear people say only father presence drops while the mothers turn up in the inner city. No, inner city children are largely taken care of by themselves, their siblings, their grandmothers, their aunts, their cousins, not their mothers and fathers. Please, it's important that you begin to understand the data in your country rather than the propaganda that are fed to you every day. Propaganda are good for campaigning to get resources, to get funding from the United States and Europe, but it can't help you to make policy preparations. Then if you look at inner city males who kill, now you see the drama. The father presence is reduced somewhat. The mother presence becomes a disaster. That is why Herbert Samuel Gayle can conclude as a violence expert, not as a misogynist. My God. It's hilarious. The data, by reporting the data, you become a misogynist. I've been called so publicly for presenting these data. Look carefully with me, everybody. The boys who kill, it's their mother presence that has become a disaster. Their father presence was already rotten, and now mother presence joins it. So it means that boys who kill don't have mothers and fathers. Only 17% of them has a mother, have a father, and only 21% of them have a father. Therefore, we can conclude that boys who kill have a parental problem, not a father problem. Stop it. And inner city females who kill, I have 64 in my data set now, have a father problem. If you notice, the father drops while the mother becomes a little bit more constant. But for both males and females who kill people, they have a parent problem. Shall we go? And when you look at their involvement, it's the same pattern. Let's go. Now, here is what you need to have in your heads before you make any conclusion. The red line represents homicide, the homicide rate in Jamaica. The homicide rate in Jamaica is moving upwards constantly, and the father presence in Jamaica is moving upward constantly. How then can father absence be a primary cause? I actually heard a scholar, somebody with a PhD, permanent head damage, saying father presence, father absence is the primary problem. Please go and do some research. There are the data for Jamaica. In 1948, only 18% of Jamaicans had a biological father in their home. In 2017, it's 42%. In other words, there are other things happening with the ontological security of young people. That means despite father presence becoming better, the father presence cannot cover the immense damage being done to young people, males and females. And that is why, even though father presence is becoming better, the homicide rate is not going down. I hope you get it, please. Here is the indicator. If you take food, if you take parenting support, if you take sense of safety, and by sense of safety, we mean being scared of being killed by the state and by gunmen. If you take and opportunity structures, having the capacity or the space or the access to education or training, you are going to see something interesting. 77% of shielded children had access or at least a passing grade, yes, of ontological index of all four of those things, compared to 69% of low, 53% of medium, 28% of high, and less than a quarter of all the people who kill repeatedly have any sense of tomorrow. Education and training. When we use the boys who drop out before grade 9 as the baseline, right, we are able by creating that baseline to understand the power of education, which is why we discovered that if a family educates a child, a boy, it means that that family also is providing food, or the child is getting food in order to go to school. There is parental love and attention, right? And a child literally needs one stable parent. One. For those of us who believe in God, isn't he powerful or she powerful? One. You need one stable parent. So you can imagine the crisis with these children because they have zero parent stable. All right? When you check on those, the kids who have enough of ontological security to be able to complete 3 CXCs, they don't even have to pass them, are 4 times less likely to be high risk. And the ones who are kept in school until CAPE are 10 times safer. And the ones who you love and protect and feed and give the opportunities and the everything to the point where they make it to UE or any other tertiary institution are 85 times safer. And that is why I have been stressing so much that we invest in our human capital. By running the index against the youth we have studied, we have found that on average, a young man with a score above 50 was 12 times less likely to kill than one below 50. We also found that education was the most powerful single ontological factor. And here is your nightmare. This is the current nightmare we have. If you attend an all-girls school, you have an 89% chance of successfully completing math and English and 3 other subjects which qualify you for tertiary education in Jamaica. If you go to an all-boys school, which is more crowded, despite the fact that they have these wealthy alumni, they're overcrowded, they need more space, they have less resources still, 69% of you will have that chance. If you go to a traditional co-ed, it will be 61%. The average for those is 73%. If you go to a technical school, 17% of you will have immediate educational ontological security. And if you go to a new secondary school, 1 of 10 of you will have a chance in the first 3 years. The latest data from the JCF summarizes all that we've been saying. Unemployed, unskilled, and farmhands account for 74% of murders, shootings, and breaches of the Firearm Act out of 9,306 people from January 2006 to October 2021. The message is clear. If young people are provided with ontological security, if we provide them with training and education, that purple patch will, in fact, yes, this section here will disappear. What do we do? It is annoying, can't find any other word, that I have been consulted by the British. I've been consulted by Belizeans, by Latinos, by Trinidadians. I've been consulted all over the world to show people how to reduce violence. I've done a violence audit in Belize. The homicide rate was heading past 56 per 100,000. It is now 28. I've done the work in Trinidad. Had some political hitches at first, won't call any names, but it is now in effect. Their murders are going down. The Jamaican people are yet to call the only violence expert, and I say this without any apology. I don't know of anybody else in this region who has been trained in violence. People have done patches of violence. This is my training. We are yet to have a serious sit down to create what is called a violence reduction plan. What we've been having is crime plans. Seriously, a violent country needs a crime plan or a violence plan? A violence reduction plan cuts across 15 years and broken down into 5 years, which then maps into what is happening based on data from an audit. An audit must be a complete coverage of the country. For Belize, it costs 150,000 US. For Trinidad, it costs 250,000 US. For Jamaica, it will cost 500,000 US. I have seen Jamaica spend 500,000 US on garbage, but we struggle to get the attention of Jamaican people to do a violence audit. A violence audit will see the Safer platform by Paris Leayer and myself working together to give you a map that points out where children are abused, where gunshots are being fired, where everything is happening, which you're going to map on a platform called Safer. And you are going to be able to operate based on nothing but science, no prejudice, not because I'm a labor right, not because I'm a comrade. Science. There are so many policies in Jamaica that are built on who are they? Are they labor rights or comrades? We need to move from that segmentary factionalism to science, to having data that other countries are using that you should be using. We also have to address the gender issue in a real way. We have to create a snake in a tunnel in Jamaica. There should be no parliament in the Caribbean with less than 40% women. There are too many men in our parliaments. The larger proportion, the more men you have in a parliament, is the quicker they make decisions. And decisions about the development of developing countries, yes, require time. And that's what happens when you have young people, old people, women and men working together. You bring a greater variety of cognition and experience. But we also must address the plight, the education plight of boys. Can't have co-ed good institutions with more than 60% females. Have to begin to look at these things. And it can't be that we're going to ask the women not to come to provide space for the men. We have to provide space for both. Let's go. What's the bottom line? How do you reduce violence in Jamaica? You reduce the risk that the young people are having. You create more shielded young people, males and females. The more shielded people you create, the less murderers you will have. God bless you. I genuinely hope we make an attempt to begin to try, because believe me, it can get worse.
Okay, well, Kiwanis and guests, that is the essence of the presentation. There is a Q&A, which brings out a couple more facts, but I thought I'd pause here. I don't know if anybody has anything that they want to, obviously Dr. Gayle is not here, but as I said, the Q&A does bring out a couple more points, because some interesting questions were posed. But does anyone have anything? As I said, when I watch this again, sometimes you can go to a presentation and you don't really absorb all that is being presented. But when I watch this again, and I said, this is really important information, and I really want more people to be exposed to it. If anybody has any comment, we can take a couple comments if there are any, and then I suggest that maybe we just play some of the Q&A.
Well, DP Stu, if I might.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, my comment is really not much. I'm just saying that I was so engrossed in listening a while ago. I didn't even I forgot that it was not a live thing. It felt like it was a presentation just being made.
Yes, it does, because it's the same format, and he could have been here saying the same thing. But this was presented in May 2022.
And as you say, I saw the original, but now that I'm watching it again, it is coming. You're realizing so much that you missed the first time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you want me to just play some of the Q&A?
Before we go to the Q&A, DP Stu, can I ask someone to move for an extension of 10 minutes for us to complete our meeting?
So moved.
Okay, can I have a seconder, please?
Second.
Okay. Who was that seconding?
DLG Winnie.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. Yes, DP Stu. I think you can go ahead.
Okay.
DP Stewart.
Yes, let's go ahead.
Roy here from Toronto, Canada.
Hi, Roy. How are you doing?
Good. What has happened since 2022?
Well, this is again the good question. This is what I remember when I was trying to get Dr. Gayle to come. It took me a little while. He did ask that question. Okay, I come and I do a presentation, but what are you gonna do with it? What are you gonna do with the information? And I don't think we really haven't done anything with the information. And that's one of the reasons why I said, let me try and resurrect this again and see, because that category where they said what they call them now, the boys with the combatants, those are the prime ones. And we need to save them. And the point is, the collateral, the women are almost dying as part of the collateral damage. So it's not as if to say you can save the women without saving the men. And that was a very important point brought out in the presentation. I don't have an answer for you, President Roy. I don't have an answer for you, but I'm hoping that, out of this repeat, that maybe we can take up, some aspect of it. There are some other aspects that come out in the Q&A, which might help us to move in that direction.
But also interesting here, DP Stuart, what came out is that you have to somehow find a way to save the mothers and keep the mothers around the boys if you're going to help them.
Well, this point about the food insecurity that they mentioned, and this idea that if you're a boy, you must go out and fend for yourself and help the family. You're really putting undue pressure on them, and they are now going to become criminals because they don't have any other means to provide. Right. And one of the things that I am I'm interested in is that sometimes you have these interventions, but they don't speak to providing any assistance, because it's really money that is going to help to reduce food insecurity. Somebody has, it needs finance, and you hear programs that come up with, but there's no element in it that helps to provide some kind of sustenance. And this is where it's not just the boys who are at risk, it's the families that are at risk. And that is something that needs some attention. That when we come up with some of these programs, we have to create. I don't have to feel that if you give somebody some money, to help them, that they're going to just become dependent on you. I don't know if the data supports that, but sometimes that is what it takes. Sometimes that's what it takes.
But what has also come out is that if you can keep them in school,
yes,
then it is so
that helps.
As you said earlier on about how Kiwanis can help, maybe what we should be doing, since we are saving the children, maybe we should be going to the school and asking them who are the at-risk kids and concentrate on them and keeping them in school.
Well, this is said that even if they didn't pass the exam, pass the subjects, they were still better off.
As long as they stayed in school.
Right. That was another point that came.
So if we could target and save some of those who had the profile of about to drop out, if we could target some of those and actually keep them there, then it would better their future.
And there's nothing wrong if we want to do something, we can go back to Dr. Gayle and say, okay, we give us some advice here. That option is still open.
Yeah.
All right, let me play some of
And
the
DP
Q&A.
Stewart.
Yeah.
Also, apart from that, I mean, this is the second time I'm listening to this. The mothers who do not breastfeed.
Yes.
Their kid. I was
Yes.
amazed by that. But
yes.
Maybe this is something that the Kiwanis Club can address or try to address.
That's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point. Yeah. They have they, as I said, it's not intentional abuse, but they feel that is the way. I mean, you know, it's not just the breastfeeding, but you have to you have to grow them tough.
Tough, yeah.
You have to grow them tough. Otherwise, them suffer, you know, in this kind of environment.
Okay.
Okay. Let me just start some of the Q&A. Dr. Gayle, that was really. I have a quick question on something. I know you haven't said anything about sport. How does sport factor into maybe education or the whole violence scenario, or as a solution?
Tool of ontological security. You want to harness all your tools of ontological security. Anything at all that gives a young person a sense of hope, something to get up tomorrow to live for, will reduce your violence. And that's why sports is so powerful. That is why you have all this investment across the United States and in Europe saying, let's box it out, and where gyms are. That's why you have all these cameras and so forth, these projects that says, shoot with your camera. Anything at all you do that provides young people with a sense of tomorrow will reduce your violence. Anything at all you do that threatens the lives of young people will cause them to threaten the lives of others. That is why states of emergency are so dangerous.
We would have invite the media to field their questions first. A question from Anthony Log. I don't know if he's having an audio problem or we could allow him to. Flo, could you repeat that? All right, let me just read that question. What is the data showing in terms of women's involvement in crime, Dr. Gayle? And has there been an increase over the last 5 years?
No, it has remained quite stable. What happens is that, as I said earlier, it's a corollary of men having war with men. So when there's an increase in murders overall, there's an increase in attacks on women, and there's also an increase in women's participation. So where you see the situation, so if you look at the data, let's go back to the data, right? Males are 10 times more likely to be killed in Jamaica than women. Women are also 10 times less likely to join a gang than men. Those are your data. Any data you have for men, divide it by 10. You get what's happening with women overall in terms of hardcore violence.
So I think I heard you say once, Dr. Gayle, that you think the Ministry of Education was coming around to. Did this have anything to do with well, coming around to seeing the light? Words to that effect. But did it have anything to do with building more schools for boys? I mean, have they gotten to that stage?
We don't expect that to happen quickly. Where we want to start with the Ministry of Education, which is the direction I see them going, and I give thanks because it's not all doom and gloom. When you find a ministry that is going in the right direction, you have to give some commendation, and that is to understand, first of all, what I see them doing now is trying to understand the problem, trying to identify the schools we call tier 4 schools, which have less than 5% of the children being able to qualify for college. Now, if you go to a school that less than 1 of 20 of you will qualify for tertiary education, you know, you don't have to, it's not rocket science that that school is in trouble. And so we're trying right now, I've been working with them for them to be able to identify these areas and to begin to work through to see if you can get more children. The more psychological security you provide, space you provide of education and training, and the more families, because in order, remember again, in order for a child to get education, the child must also have food. The child must also, you remember that, right? The child must have parents. So you have to have the social workers working. I'm trying to get them to see the whole picture rather than just say, hey, we have some path lunch, right? And then the child eat the path lunch at school, but when he goes back home, the last cut and slice of bread is missing and the child can't come back tomorrow. Yeah? So you'll see a lot of kids, they go to school for the path lunch, eat the path lunch, and then go to sleep. We cannot have children at that level, right? And make a claim that we are providing training. And so, and that's why I'm commending the Ministry of Education, because they're now in the process of finding out. That's way better than other ministries.
Well, the same applies for employment. You hire persons, you have to do basic training for them, let's say security guards.
Thank you.
And you have to provide bus fare.
Yes.
And you have to provide a meal during training. Because they can't come to training. And if they do come to training, if you don't feed them, they can't complete the training, you know.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I'm happy you realize that ontological security is not rocket science.
And we don't find the ladies having that problem, the female recruits.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen any of the studies done by students on the HARD program. It's hilarious. The boy and the girl gets the same stipend. The boy takes his stipend to his mother, attempts to go for the week hungry, while the girl eats her money.
Yes. We have a motion for extension of time. Do we have a second now? An extension of?
Seconded.
Seconded, yes, by DP Stewart.
Yes. President Richard?
Yes, LGPD.
There's another question from Anthony Lugg.
Yes.
And of course, this is directed at Dr. Gayle. What do you make of successive governments' failure to develop a violence plan?
Wow. Here's the problem with, sorry for that. Here's the problem with a violence reduction plan. It takes time. It takes bringing all the trained people together, right? It has to cut across this wonderful thing we have called labor rights and comrades. That's not easy in a segmentary factional state where only 6% of us are Jamaican before labor rights and comrades. We've done the research now 7 times and it is still only 6% of people pass the index to say you're Jamaican before you're labor right and comrade. So a violence reduction plan is going to really take cooperation and work. And it is not built on force. It is built on ontological security. Remember, you need force for the next election. You need to be stable and ready for the next election. And that is the nightmare, right? That is a nightmare for governments. It's not that they haven't heard me. It's not that they haven't listened. They're just scared. It may sound like a shocker to you, but they are genuinely scared. I've sat down with governments outside of Jamaica and I've said to them directly, if you go on a violence reduction path, you still have to do some of the foolishness just for some of the people who were fooled by it to remain your friends. I am very straight up. It's called the stone soup dilemma. Right? So Richard comes to you, right, Desmond, and say, we're gonna make soup. But I have here the key ingredient, a stone. That is suppression. You drop the stone in the pot, and then everybody come and bring Irish moss, a piece of yam and so forth, and build a real good soup. Then you can take out the stone and throw away and say, hey, hey, I did contribute. That is really what a violence reduction plan looks like. You keep the stupid stone in the pot, which is doing absolutely nothing. Yes, a nice clean stone, and you do the real things, because some idiots want to know the stone is in the pot. Can't tell you it any better.
Can I ask a question?
So, Marcel, before, somebody has a, I don't know if it's a fan with an open mic that is causing a really, disturbing sound. Okay, good.
Unless you're by the beach, yes.
All right, I think it's gone now. Go ahead, Marcel.
Yeah, I think that fan was mine.
Okay.
I'm just again, real quick. Amazing presentation. Listen, I think I get it, or most of us get it, what has to be done for the long-term solution. But I correct in saying that for the immediate, you mentioned the redeployment of combatants.
Yes.
That's something that will deal with the immediate.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a secondary. Secondaries are immediate.
Right. But here's my thing now. I agree with you. But I'm reminded of right in our club here, some years ago, we had a presentation from a former principal of Jamaica College. And he told us of the strategy he had to turn things around, right? And one of it, the big takeaway from it, I remember, is that between the teachers and the old boys or what have you, right? They were able to achieve, turn around as the boys. But here was a big problem, especially for the summer holidays. When they went back into the community and they returned to GSC after the holidays, they had to start all over because they went back in the communities where the violence and the wars and everything was. So I have always been thinking that for the redeployment of the competence as you talk about, one, to get them out of the community, because they also have a big impact on the 2 and the 3. And this is something I know have to do.
Yes.
The young ones come be 2, 3, 4 years old. So these violence producers is a term I've heard, which is the combatants, right? The redeployment of them, does that include getting them out of the community, recognizing their various talents and so forth? In other words, getting them in some kind of a, what do you call it? So an era, because I know it will take time to redeploy and all that. Is that a part of what you're thinking?
That's not necessary. If you have violence interrupters on the ground who also behave as big brothers and big sisters to violence producers, right? So you outside the community can't do it. You can't stay at JC and do it. You at JC must have a linky within the community that reports to you on, let's call it the boy Killy Killy. That's a real name. Yeah. Killy Killy. Good. You get the onomatopoeia. So in order to help Killy Killy, you need to have a violence interrupter on the ground who is responsible for him, and you are the upstaker. So the two of you are working with him, so he has a mentorship framework around him all the time. So there's no break called summer. What you've attempted to do is the uptown version.
Okay.
Yes, which doesn't work. The uptown downtown version combined. That's how it's done.
Okay. Got
you. What's your word for Kiwanians? Sorry. What's your word for Kiwanians in terms of what you think we can do?
You can do a lot. You can take a small project, and please note the word small, not large. Do not ever take a child from chicken back to chicken and expect him to go back when you say you have no more chicken to give. Okay? Somebody will have to pay for the chicken, because they're not going, humans do not go back willingly to poverty and degradation.
Forward.
Take up a small group, right? At Fathers Inc., We try to mentor 10 young men and 3 to 5 young women per year. No more than that. If you go to YouTube and type in Daddy Matters, you'll see the kind of damage we've done in 30 years by taking small incremental steps. Don't try to become the Prime Minister of Jamaica or the government of Jamaica. Take your small group, work with them, and when you produce them, they will produce others.
Yes, DP Stuart, there are some
I have a question.
Who have raised, there are some persons who have their hands raised for some time.
I'm not seeing them in the chat.
I've raised my.
Okay, I see one. I see one. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Professor Dr. Gayle.
Yes.
If you became the Minister of National Security tomorrow morning, what's the first thing you would do to reduce crime?
I've been asked that question repeatedly, and I've always shaken my head to it. You'd have to ask it another way.
Yeah.
Please reword that. Please rephrase that word for me. I have zero interest in those kinds of things. I'm a scholar. I'm a nerd. I'm not. Nerds advise people who are in power. They don't get into that situation.
But could it be, I thought you were going to say something else. I was wondering if you're going to say that the solution is not so much in the suppression of crime, which is what the police are doing.
Yes, what they're doing is wrong. What needs to be done is okay. So the point is that the government, successive governments of Jamaica have gone so far as to make sure it is now in our DNA. So if you look at what's happening, we're coming from a background of violence. We were enslaved, we were colonized, we were raped. Okay, we're coming from that background. Okay, if you beat a child every day, which I said earlier, and you continue to beat that child, yeah, it's nothing. You're only making that person angrier. What do you think happens when ZOSO or SOE rolls into town? The gunmen leave. Right? The wannabe gunmen get beaten up. It's hilarious. The hardcore ones are gone. When you move, they come back. And they also move into rural communities where people are described as, right, as importees.
Yes.
Right? They become importees and they spread. I showed you a map, not for the aesthetics of it. I showed you a map to show you where we started and where we've reached. All right? That's what's been happening. So in other words, what you're required to do if you're a Minister of National Security is to have a tripartite system where you are working very closely with the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Housing, the Ministry of Welfare. You are making sure that the long-term goals are being put in place for people to have a sense of ontological security. You are making sure you're doing spear fishing. You're not going with any dragnet and picking up innocent kids. Bounty Killer asked a very powerful question that some people didn't get. He said, what happened to the good boys? Everybody's talking about the bad boys. What happened to the good boys? What happened to the ones in my study who never committed a crime? Go to church every Sabbath. I had a boy, a Seventh-day Adventist boy. He went to church every Sabbath with his mother until police broke his leg. Yeah? He has now killed 3 people.
Yes. There's a question in the chat. There's a question in the chat, Stuart.
Okay. Okay.
Miss Miller.
LG, you can help me with that. You can read it.
Let me look.
I'm not sure why people are so shy.
Would Killy be aware that someone in the community is working with someone to help him?
Yes, he needs to be aware. He needs to, this is not a sneak up. That doesn't work well with young people. He needs to know that he has a member in his community and he has a member elsewhere. 2 people working with him, and all 3 of you need to know each other.
And I see, you already see Conniston's hand up for some time, she says.
Okay, go ahead, you already see.
Hi, Dr. Gayle. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening.
Okay, so my question is, well, I have a couple. As you presented, I made notes.
Yes.
Very early in your presentation, you presented a graph with a number of Caribbean countries.
Yes.
And to include South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Have you looked at the relationship among and between these countries? What it is that brought them to the level of violence or drove them to the level of violence that the countries have experienced? Is there a relationship among and between the countries?
Yes, they were colonized.
Oh,
That was a common factor.
okay.
They are the new
And
world.
then not only that were they colonized, was it that there was any continued thing that caused them to experience this level of violence in this modern time?
Yes, the colonization hasn't ended.
Okay, so my
the governments have not made the transition. The colonizers used violence.
Yes.
The police used violence. Did you know that the Britons ended paramilitary policing in August 1829? 1829. And we today depend on it for our lives. You cannot approach the next election unless a few people get some good licks. It's crazy.
Also, just let me get my 2 questions in before I have to go.
Yes.
So also you referred to you keep making reference to slavery.
Yes.
And that basically what we're experiencing is the remnants of slavery.
Yes, there's actually a book on this. It's called a Post-Slavery Trauma.
Yes, I'm aware of it. I haven't read it as yet. However, is it that because there is some, I want to say story, history, or idea that many of the slaves that came to Jamaica were the extremely rebellious. So they had pent-up violence. Like they would not conform. They were not easily broken. So they were sent to the island, kind of like banishment as a punishment to go conform, go do your bad over there.
Yeah.
And also, what did Belize do to turn things around, and how long did it take?
Well, they listened to me. I sat with the Rotary Club. Yes, a service club changed Belize. I sat with the Rotary Club in a meeting with John Woods, who was the CEO of the Colby prison. The prison in Belize is privatized. And I said to him, you have all these young people here in prison, right? And they are gang leaders. I would like to sit down with them. I would like to be locked in the cell with them. I'd like to eat the chicken and stuff with them and sit down and work with them. I will come in the mornings. I will leave in the evenings because I didn't commit any crime, so I have to leave. And I will work with them, right? And we will hammer out a treaty. And that's where we started. And then they did an audit. They did a violence audit for $100,000 US. And we mapped out the entire country, the 360,000 people. So I think it's 380,000 now. We mapped out that country and we said, you need to do these things. And Dean Barrow did a few of them. Can you imagine? He didn't do all. He did a few of them. I remember in 2012, the young men came together, Crips and Blood, the gangs came together and were about to bomb the carnival. I was in Trinidad. I was flown from Trinidad to Belize to have a treaty again with the young people to say, here are the things we're going to do. Prime Minister, you have to make these promises here and now. The gang sent their executives to the meeting, and we had a meeting, a closed house meeting, and we made changes in Belize. I haven't seen the Jamaican government, whether they're labor rights or comrades, get to the point where they have that level of readiness. And that's one of the central crises here.
And how long was the time for the turnaround from extreme violence to now where it's kind of
2008, they dipped during COVID last year below 30, below the threshold. So I went there in 2008 so it's about 12 years.
I thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mario McDonald.
Mario McDonald, yes. Mario.
Good night. Yes, good night, everyone.
Good night, yes.
Kiwanis Club, I will tell you, tremendous thank you for bringing Dr. Gayle on this very insightful program. Young research under the mentorship of Professor Barshavan, who was also my mentor. Fathers Inc. has done
Mario.
such a tremendous.
I just recognize you.
Yes. Yes.
Big up yourself,
Herbert.
bro.
I've been
Yes,
trying to touch base with you, and I'm going to put my number. Yeah, I want to get your number back. But I was responsible for doing a lot of the visual communications, merging techniques from and communication idioms from the dancehall perspective, being one of the founders of Sting, and most of what I've done in the inner city in terms of interacting with boys and things. And Dr. Gayle has been tremendously brilliant from the 90s, I think maybe about 95 or so. When is it that you started Fathers Inc. again? It was about 97 or before?
92.
Exactly.
91. We started in 91. I joined in 93.
Yes, I think I joined about the same time, or maybe like a year or so before, because I was doing a lot of the graphics and things for it, for Professor Barshavan, my dear friend, our dear friend. But what I'm saying is that your work needs to be taken seriously. We've got to develop a national mind towards it. I'm now a Kiwanian, and I am so proud of the work, the surgical work, and I'm going to use the word surgical to describe the work that the Kiwanis Club of Jamaica does, from just the club to the foundation. I think we can help you in all little ways, and I like to say little because every intervention you talk about is extremely costly. But one of the things that we could do are some of the social intervention on the volunteerism side. And I'm from the Kiwanis Club of downtown Kingston. So whenever you want, give us a call and make a suggestion about manpower. But I am telling you, I am so proud. Barshavan is proud of you because you have not stopped biting at the bit, chomping at the bit for this. And I've watched, maybe I was 15 years without talking to you. A friend of mine said recently, why don't I try to contact you? I told him I called you once, but you didn't take my call. But I know you didn't know it was me, right? But I'd love to exchange numbers tonight and get that back together. But your work is incredible. I would want to just clap you on my own, but I'm holding the phone with the other hand. I believe some of the work that we have done with social intervention in Montego Bay, Farmites, Roseites, these places can be revisited and flankers, especially when Barry was teaming up, was directing your interest in Fathers Inc. over there in Montego Bay in about, I think it's about 2005. It was really, really a special time in my life to see that we could use university science, dancehall music, artists, the will and the desire of living to see a tomorrow, and the hope of going to a Sumfest as a kind of an apple. Then they didn't have scammers being able to afford it. So we were able to take them in groups to Sumfest in the evening. It was incredible. We had dentists and doctors making dumplings and spinners and curry chicken back with some of these shutters who confessed, like Dr. Gayle said, to wanting a mature man other than a judge to be saying 44 years in prison or life imprisonment. Talk with them on a, even once for the year. So the Kiwanis Club can arrange in our little way, and we have been doing those things, speaking to people, but along the structured line, if you come up with a plan, I'm sure that our different presidents or the foundation could look into something, Herbert. I am really so proud of that work. We're all proud of you. Give him a clap now. My hand's full. But awesome.
Thank you, Demar. Please, Stuart, I think we have time for one more question and then we'll move to the vote of thanks.
Okay. Is there one in the chat? Is there one? I don't see a hand up.
Okay. All right. So we could move to the vote of thanks then.
Yes. Okay. I won't. It's over to.
PDT Ralston knew this.
Right. Sorry, I'm going to pause the.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Well, strength 3.
Yeah, you're not so loud.
Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. Firstly,
I was trying to. Yeah, I was just trying to pause it because, in the interest of time, since
I was born in Westmoreland also. Although you're.
Oh shucks. Yes, sorry. I was just trying to pause it because since Dr. Gayle is not here, we don't need to re-listen to the vote of thanks, but it was really well done by PDT Ralston. I think at this point, I'm going to hand the meeting back to President Newton, and thanks for those who have stayed with us, and this was really impactful, and I think it just deserved a second listen. And let's hope that we can do something rather than just say, well, that was a fantastic presentation. Let's see if we can move it from just saying that to doing something. Okay, back to you, President Newton.
Okay, thank you, DP Stu. And my short vote of thanks tonight, DP Stuart, goes to you. Of all the previous guest speakers that we had, I think you found the right one for tonight. I mean, it's almost 9:30 now, and we have all still been riveted to what was being said. So thank you, sir. We're gonna move quickly now to the Sergeant at Arms. Is the Sarge here?
Do a blanket fine, President.
All right. Well, we'll just ask for a blanket contribution from the members of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston of $300 for tonight. So let's move on quickly to notices and announcements with Secretary William Reeser.
Thank you, President Newton. In the interest of time, I have a few announcements I will quickly get through. This Saturday, January 27th, Division 23 Central online training for Builders, KKs, and Action Club at 9:30 a.m. This Saturday also is the funeral for President Newton's Ramjal's father. Details will be provided. Next month is going to be a busy month as President John Chevy will be visiting from Canada. He will be in Division 23 Central from February 7 to 10. On Wednesday, February 7, we'll be having an all clubs meeting and mass installation, to which we will have two prospects. Jermaine Wood and Emil Clark. Both these gentlemen, please note the venue. It is Hope United Church on Hope Road. On prior to that, on February the 6th is Tuesday. There will be the launch of the Discipline and Courtesy program, which will be held at Our Lady the Angels at 9 a.m. All members are invited to attend on that day. And lastly, well, two more. Sunday, February 8th, please note, please save in your diaries. Second quarter divisional council meeting. And just a reminder that Sunday, March 24th, the Starter Club's 60th anniversary celebration with a church service. And lastly, the ECNC District Convention, reminder is from May 17th to the 19th. Our registration is now open, early registration is going on. And after the 15th of February, you can register, but you'll no longer get benefit of early registration. President Newton, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Secretary William. And if there's anyone else who has any notices or announcements, please go ahead and make them. None? All right. Well, we'll move then to the thoughts for the week with DP Marcel.
Okay. I should have mentioned that DP Marcel has sent in his apology for absence. Okay. But because he had a church meeting that he couldn't get out of. But he did send me a thought. He did send me a thought that he asked me to communicate. So let me give you the thought. Okay. It says, you've got to get up every morning with determination if you're going to go to bed with satisfaction. And that was his thought for the day. Just one.
Okay, just one.
Yes.
All right. All right, great. Well, thank you. It has been a long but fulfilling evening. I want to thank all of the persons who joined us. Some have left, but I really want to thank everyone who joined us. And again, let me say it again, thanks to DP Stewart for coming up with this replay. It was a really good one. For those persons who have called me, written, and all of that, I thank you. I thank you for your condolences. I thank you for reaching out. Yes, it has been a tough time, but we'll get by. And knowing that there are people out there who are willing to, who have you in their thoughts and in their prayers does help. And I really appreciate it. At this time, I'm going to ask
let me just say one thing before you close. I want to just give a shout out to DP Earl, because it was his idea when he said, why not look at some of your past, because we were talking about the archive that we have built up, and he said, why not look at one of your past presentations as a filler for the evening. And so I got that idea from him. So thanks again, Earl.
Okay. And okay, there you are. I just looked and I saw the glow and I found you. Thanks, DP Earl.
Big brother, step in.
For those of us who know what's going on, it's an inside joke. All right. So at this point, I would ask you all to raise your glass and raise a toast to Kiwanis International, Jamaica land we love. And it's now 9:29. As I said, it has been a long evening, but well spent. And this meeting of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston is now terminated. Thank you all for coming. It was a good evening. Wish for everyone a prosperous new year. And let's just continue moving forward in Kiwanis.